Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Rouse and friends. We have part two. I think that's two, right? Part two with Nancy Sarnoff, the real estate writer for the Houston Chronicle. We're going to talk about the top 3 things that she's covered over the last 12 years with her time at the Houston Chronicle and just get some interesting perspective from her vantage point. So, DJ, hit that music, please.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
Hey, welcome back to another week of the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Rouse. This is your host, Kevin Rouse, and it's Kevin Rouse and friends, and I still have my friend. She stayed a whole week to take this second episode of our exclusive with Nancy Sarnoff, the real estate Yoda. She is here. She is also, other than being the real estate Yoda, she is the Houston Chronicle real estate writer. So thank you for sleeping over for
I
whole
wore the
week.
same clothes and everything.
Me too.
I know.
Me too. It's amazing, man, how that happens. And so part 2 of our podcast with Nancy Sarnoff. And again, I want to thank you for taking this time out to this whole week and an hour that you spent with us.
You are so welcome. This has been a long week.
A long week. I mean,
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I'll tell y'all stories later on the next podcast as far as, the water, we had to share water. It's a long story. Anyway, so we left off last week with me trying to do a cliffhanger, kind of like, the old Dallas days, like Who Shot JR and all that kind of stuff. And the cliffhanger was kind of the top 3 what you found the most interesting or dynamic or CSI, like, I don't know, I'm adding words, stories that you've covered over your 12 years with the Chronicle. So I said top 3, if it's 1 or 2 or if it's 5, it doesn't matter. But just kind of some of the things that you've thought to be most interesting as you've covered real estate in Houston.
Well, I think I need to start number 1 with Hurricane Harvey.
Oh, wow. Yes. Okay.
And obviously that was something that none of us had really been through before. And the stories that came after that were really powerful, and they're still being told. But what happened to this city and what's happened in the past year, when you asked me last time, kind of the biggest changes at the paper, I feel like I have never been as busy as a beat reporter covering real estate in Houston, Texas than I am now. And part of it is because I do a podcast once a week, and that takes a good bit of time. But it's also because of the hurricane. So after Hurricane Harvey, not only did I have, kind of my regular beat stories to cover, there were so many stories that needed to be told about housing and about neighborhoods and about people and about their insurance and the ones that didn't have insurance and what they were doing with their homes and if they were becoming homeless and this was a newspaper-wide effort. Everyone has been writing about Harvey for the past year.
From business to sports to the Metro desk, all that stuff. Right.
And it continues. Right. So that has been, I've never learned as much, and it's just there's still so much to cover. Houston, has the past 10 years. I mean, I think I have somewhat of a unique perspective because I have lived here most of my life, and so I didn't really start paying that much attention to development and growth until I was older, but there's been so much change, whether it's downtown and neighborhoods gentrifying and suburbs expanding and, people driving 70 miles to get to work. And now with Harvey, it's sort of it's like we're having to reevaluate everything.
Yeah. So and with Harvey being one of your top, so you've lived here and now worked in, if I'm doing the math right, you would have been working at the Chronicle during Ike.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And Allison might have been pre.
It was yes. I was at the Houston Business Journal.
Business Journal. Okay. So Ike versus Harvey from a coverage standpoint, because Ike, to me, from a real estate standpoint, I had personal property in Galveston, and Galveston was like ground zero for Ike. Not that it didn't have an effect on Houston, but Galveston was like, I've never seen anything. It looked like a war zone. Just like Harvey made parts of Houston look.
Right. Yeah, I remember going to visit Galveston because I have a good friend who lives there.
Yeah.
And she works for the paper there. And I remember the first time I went back, and it was a while after Ike. And the place, it was so sad.
It was sad. I got on the island like a month. No, they let us on 3 weeks to a month afterwards. I had a property on the Strand. Personal investment property, which is my worst real estate mistake. So if you guys ever go back to listen to my podcast, I have a podcast called The Worst Real Estate Mistake I Ever Made, and that is it. So, but with that being said, from your perspective in covering Ike versus Harvey, is there a difference? I know Harvey was a much bigger storm, but based on it being one of your top 3, I would assume that there are some marked differences between Harvey and Ike from your perspective.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back to Ike.
It's 2008.
Yeah. And yeah, it was definitely more of a concern in the coastal areas,
right.
And so there just wasn't, the damage, if I remember correctly, to the west side of town, and it was more wind, and it was. I remember the power was out for weeks, and
I thought that was going to be the worst, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Harvey. As I was telling someone, I went to a conference recently, and you're from Houston, Harvey. Especially right after the storm, I was traveling a little bit for real estate stuff, and people were like, "Oh, how's everything going?" And I told my basic line was Harvey came for everybody. It was no respecter of neighborhood, no respecter of race, no respecter of income. When you see the former mayor dragging his stuff in a trash bag out of his memorial home on TV. Harvey didn't have you know what, I think I'm just going to hit this neighborhood.
Right.
I live in Sienna Plantation out in Missouri City. So not only did we have Harvey, but we had a tornado that hit our neighborhood, block from my house, tore my roof up.
Oh my gosh.
And then we have a section in Sienna called Vieux Carré, which is kind of a New Orleans themed section, destroyed it, destroyed it. So everybody has a Harvey story. I don't know and I'm not saying everybody didn't have Ike's story, but I would guess, this is Kevin's opinion, that everybody's Harvey story is a tad bit more serious and different than their Ike story, at least inside of Houston.
Yeah.
At least inside of Houston.
Yeah, and for me, I have a different perspective looking at Harvey because we were staying downtown at the Marriott Marquis.
Okay.
Because my spouse's company had us stay there because he works downtown, and they wanted to be sure people could get to the office.
Gotcha.
Well, even though we stayed downtown and his office was downtown, no one could get to the office after Harvey, and they ended up setting up shop there in the hotel. But on Sunday morning, after Harvey, I guess, really came for Houston on Saturday. Sunday morning, I was at the Marriott Marquis, and the night before happened, and it was devastating. And the mayor opened up the shelter at the George R. Brown Convention Center, and so my editor sent a note to the whole staff saying, "Can anyone get to the convention center? There's going to be a shelter." And I was looking right at it.
Wow.
And
it's right there.
There was one other guy who lived downtown, but no one else could get there except for me and
to walk across
this other guy.
Yeah.
So I walked across the street, and I spent the next 3 days at the convention center seeing the thousands and thousands of people coming in that had lost everything. And, mostly there were middle income people there, but this is mostly people that didn't have a lot of means and
lower socioeconomic status.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and homeless people. I remember the first day walking up, and I was out talking to a guy, and he was like, "You don't look like you got flooded." And I was like, "No, I'm here as a reporter." And I was like, "What about you?" And he's like, "I live on the streets, and I couldn't take the rain one more day."
Wow.
And so it was just I'd never seen anything like that before, and then seeing kind of the volunteers that came through and that whole thing. It was just
some of them brave dangerous conditions to come volunteer. I was saying,
and just I remember there were rumors going around at the convention center that they weren't taking any more supplies because there were so many people, but that were bringing things, but that really wasn't the case.
Okay.
And so it was just, I don't know, and that's not really the real estate story. It's more of the people story.
Yeah, no, it's
and to be able
wrapped around the real estate as far as getting flooded out. And,
right.
Yeah.
And and so now just kind of looking at how neighborhoods are changing and have changed, like neighborhoods on the west side, Bear Creek, and some of those areas where every house flooded, or almost every house flooded. People did not have insurance. They lived in the reservoir, and they did not have insurance because they weren't required to, because they didn't know.
Right.
And those whole neighborhoods are changing, as you probably know better than anyone.
Yeah.
Foreclosures and rentals and investors.
And it's still going on. People think that, so I had a lot of calls to the office about kind of the folks that come in after a storm, and especially after floods, and they want to buy properties that, pennies on the investor folks.
Yep.
And I've had calls literally like, I just want, if it's flooded, I don't want anything, I want, or it's damaged from the storm, trying to kind of bottom hunt and not realizing, because I do real estate with a heart. And what I mean by that is because I grew up on the foreclosure, we were talking off camera about, I started off selling a lot of foreclosures and became known for that. I've had to knock on someone's door representing the bank and say, hey, here's your cash for keys. And so I have a perspective of loss in doing what I do. And so that's not a lot of the real estate that I tend to do when I'm like, ooh, let me call and knock on doors and see if people have lost their house. Not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that's just not who I am. But with that being said, that whole west side, I guess east of the reservoir, going east, I should say. Devastating. I've sold homes, my residential days, all up and down.
Yeah.
And so it was just
that must have been
and I remember there's a neighborhood, and I can't remember the exact name of it, right at I-10 on Highway 6. I want to say it was maybe a week and a half after the storm, where everybody's trying to get back up and running, and it still was underwater.
Yep.
It still was underwater.
Yeah.
And I was like, man,
a lot of
I knew the reservoir was there because I've passed by it a million times. I've sold property around it,
right.
But I never, until I saw this, understood really understood its true purpose, and how, and then the whole controversy around whether they should have opened it up or not. I think you covered that as well, or Chronicle covered it.
Yeah.
And that's still going on, lawsuits. And I mean, it's I think from my vantage point, Houston has realized how serious flooding and how development, not only with the new development guidelines where you have to be 4 feet up and things of that nature, but how I don't think have taken as serious these floodways and things of that nature where, hey, if I put a berm up, then I'm good. Well, are you?
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
And I live behind one, by the way. We had to be out of Siena for a week. Because they were concerned about the levee breaking, just like in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so, because if it broke, we basically live in a bowl, right? Now, I did find out, it's amazing how many people become civil engineers during a storm. I did find out that I live in the highest point of Siena, but I also found out that the way Siena is designed to drain towards my section. All right.
Wow.
And so that's why I couldn't get to our house because of where we lived in the neighborhood. So I say all that to say, if that was your most, it sounds like that was one of your most important stories because of the people part more so, or in addition to the real estate.
Yeah. And it's just a story that's gonna be a story
with us for a minute, right?
Yeah.
There's still Hurricane Katrina stories coming out of,
exactly.
And it's been almost 20 years. So
yeah. So I feel like it fundamentally changed the city in certain ways.
Yeah.
And like neighborhoods, whole neighborhoods are changing.
And people's value, like I think about people that are retired that have a majority of their, a lot of people don't prepare for retirement. You and I were talking about, wills and stuff
Right.
after. before we started, a lot of people, their equity in their home is their retirement, right?
Yeah, and they lost it all.
Lost it all.
And they didn't have flood insurance because most people that got flooded did not have flood insurance.
So I'm going to take this opportunity right now to look at the camera and tell you and put my hand up and say, hi, my name is Kevin. I'm a real estate broker of 20 years as of next month, and I did not have flood insurance. And how many times have I told my clients, you must get flood insurance? I did not have flood insurance.
I did not have flood insurance.
Really?
The real estate reporter for the Houston
Real estate
Chronicle
Yoda?
did not have flood insurance.
Really?
Yep.
I have it now, by the way. Yeah.
I have it now too.
So, but I'm not in the flood zone, right? I'm not in the flood zone. Why do I need flood insurance?
Why in the world would I need it?
Guess that was the best $425 I spent.
Yeah, exactly. And if I get flooded, And
this is somebody that had been flooded. So I got 17 feet of water in Ike, in Galveston.
Okay.
All right. So I knew the power flood insurance because that's the only claim that paid when I got. And so even with that experience, but I was in a flood zone, so I was required to get it in Galveston. I didn't have it. So
your house was in this tornado. Was your house underwater also?
No, it was not underwater. The water came up kind of midways in our yard. Okay. We're in a corner lot. And so we just couldn't no one could get to their house.
Right.
Our streets were rivers.
Yeah.
But the river never crested to our house because I realized how high. It's ironic. I just had fixed my driveway because when people would back out of my driveway, it would scrape the front of their car. And my wife was like, nobody was going to ever come in our house. They're going to mess up their. And I just got a cement guy to fix that. And I was like, man, our house is high. Well, the reason it's high is, I guess, the engineering when they built that section was like, hey, we need to put it up a certain amount. And I did not have an issue. It came up a little bit past the sidewalk.
Okay. So
our damage came from the tornado, not from tornado and rain damage from that being happening, but not from flooding. But there are some houses in Siena that flooded towards the back, where really kind of in the floodway area. The floodway thing is to me the biggest revelation for me personally as a real estate practitioner, that we have so much development in the floodway.
Right.
Right. And I didn't even know what a floodway was before the storm.
Yeah, no, I mean. Right.
So there's the flood zone, and then there's basically the tributary just past the flood zone, where it's kind of overflow.
Yeah.
And so, we have a significant amount of development in that floodway, especially on the west side.
Yeah, and the flood pool. I didn't know about that
exactly.
Either. And ton of housing was built in the flood pool, basically.
Yeah, and I always tell people we have plenty of land in Texas and we can continue to build, but maybe not so much where we should be building. So Hurricane Harvey was one story. Any other stories that come to mind that you find particularly interesting for if you were writing your real estate Yoda memoir, that you would put in the book?
I would definitely have to say the Ashby high rise.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because that's
Good
a big
drama.
Commercial real estate story that it's still
going on, right?
ongoing. So 10 years.
And for those of you people that might not be familiar with that, can you give them just a Reader's Digest?
Yeah. So the Ashby high rise is a proposed residential high rise in the Southampton Boulevard Oaks area near Rice University. And the developers announced it, proposed it, and the neighborhood started fighting. It became a years-long battle between the developers and the city and the neighborhood. There were lawsuits, there were permits filed, and then approved and then declined, and big lawsuits, money won, then lost. I mean, it was, that's something that I could probably write a book about.
Yeah.
Because there were so many twists and turns to that story. And the developers still own the site.
I was about to ask you what's going on now.
Yeah, they still own the property. There are still signs. I mean, it kind of became known for these yellow and black signs that everyone put in the neighborhood.
On the bumper stickers.
Oh my gosh!
It was.
Bumper stickers.
The marketing behind the resistance marketing they did a really good job on the marketing.
Oh yeah, I mean those images are iconic now. In fact, and I talk about it in one of my podcasts. We interviewed the developers of the Ashby high rise. And that was a 2-part episode. That was a really good one.
Right.
Looped in
podcast. Yeah, looped in.
Houston Chronicle podcast, all about real estate.
Right.
So Yeah, I remember talking about what happened, and I remember going around that time going to a Halloween party, and someone was dressed up as the Ashby high-rise. So it just became a part of the culture here, and yeah.
Did you get pictures of that? Mm-mm. Oh, that would have been awesome.
I know someone's probably got some.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Actually. But yeah, so it's still there. It's still just an empty piece of land, very high-profile area, very affluent neighborhood. People still have massive signs up in their yard, and the developers say they're still going to build it. But
so that's the last article I read from you on that. I should say was that you were updating kind of what was going on, and developers said they were still going to build.
Yeah.
I think they're waiting for a lawsuit to be settled. It was something that was holding them up to start.
Yeah. Now I think it's. I think they're waiting just to get their financing.
Gotcha.
And while this was going on, there was the Great Recession.
Right.
And
it might have saved them
of apartments.
Yeah, it might have saved them in certain aspects, even though they spent a whole lot of money on. So I teach at Prairie View A&M University. Shout out to Prairie View Graduate School in real estate and community development. And so I teach a community physical structures class, which is kind of urban planning 101. And I still use that as one of my weeks to talk about, since it's a community development class, to talk about how the community and developers mix, basically. And I have them read that article, the original articles, and a couple articles, your articles that are linked to, and then I have them discuss basically, the pros and cons and look at it from different perspectives, whatever. So it is a master class in development and community.
It's a great case study.
It is a case study. That's exactly what I use it for.
Case study. Yeah. You should have them next time listen to the podcast.
I will. I'm going to add that to the...
Just because they will get to hear the developer's side.
Okay.
What
because it's easy to find what the resistance is talking on. If you just do Ashby High Rise Google,
right.
You'll find plenty of websites and blogs.
Yeah.
But you're right, you don't normally hear from the developer other than maybe in quotes and articles and stuff like that. So I will do that.
Yeah, and it was a fascinating interview.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of it speaks for itself. But it was a 2-part episode. The first part we just talk about kind of the background,
right,
and then we interview the developers.
Developers. So that's 2. One more. What are you thinking?
One more. Gosh, it's hard because I'm sure I'm missing.
Yeah, and I'll put you on the spot.
So many big ones, but just I don't know. Maybe just kind of how the housing market's changed. How Houston has always been known as a cheap place to live and to buy property.
Yes,
and that is not the case.
Not so much.
Not so much anymore. Even like the Woodlands, people can't afford to live in the Woodlands, and it's 30 miles outside of downtown.
So when I first got the HUD contract, and for those of you that don't know, the HUD contract was the contract to list all the HUD foreclosures in Houston. There were 2 brokers in Houston. We used both to list about 100 properties a month, plus or minus. This is 06, 07. The average price of a HUD home was about $85,000, 06, 07. The median price of a home in Houston at that time was hovering between, say, $115,000 and $125,000, right? Median price now is $200,000, $200,000 plus actually.
Yeah.
$225,000 or $220,000, something like that. That's like in 12 years.
Yeah.
Right. So the new affordable house, and I feel for folks. I still get some residential calls in the office, and you get a teacher or middle class worker looking for, man, just if I could find something $130,000, and I'm sitting there thinking like, there is some stuff at $130,000, but to be honest with you, it's probably in areas that would be difficult, for you to live in. And so, but at the end of the day, it's almost impossible.
Right.
Impossible to find an affordable house. And I consider affordable from a layman's standpoint of kind of plus or minus 150 now. It's amazing how that has changed from, low 100s or late, under 100 to now 200 plus. It's amazing.
I know. I mean, and like you said, the people who are working full-time good jobs, they cannot afford to live near their work, and it just seems so unfair,
right?
Right. I mean, as a journalist,
or they're living way out, like way out,
yeah. And so they're having to commute,
right.
and we could go on and on, but it's a big affordability crisis. I guess that's
Do you
the
see any
theme.
solutions in people you've interviewed or things you've seen that all of us may not be privy to? As to, I know the mayor's trying to doing the complete communities deal. I heard your podcast, and I'm familiar with because of some business interest about what's going on with the City of Houston Housing and the lower board, the Land Bank board, which was an attempt. We can have a whole nother podcast on that alone. But do you see anything out there that's actually working to try to fix that?
Gosh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we've got a lot of land that's undeveloped close in, just
infill
sitting
dirt,
there.
we call it,
People can own land and just hold it for as long as they want.
And get a good return on it, by the way. Yeah. From an investor standpoint.
Right.
So since I do more commercial real estate now, in fact, I'm about to list a city block that's close to downtown now. But the list price is going to be like $3.5 million for 1.4 acres, right? It's a whole city block.
Where is that?
It's in the 77004 right next to downtown area, and so but that's like $52 to $54 a square foot. I've seen comps at like $70 a square foot. The closer you get to downtown, and so I say that to say that behind this block that I'm about to list is a senior housing that's just been built, and it's built within the last 3 or 4 years. But it was community development in their capital stack, which is how they get their money from bank and then some other folks, was heavily subsidized by the federal government and things of that nature. To me, the solution to them being able to do, and that's another need, by the way, that I've seen in the market is senior housing.
Yep.
It's senior affordable housing.
Right.
Senior affordable housing.
Right.
And that's a lot of seniors, especially in gentrifying areas like 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, who own their homes, but the taxes have gotten to the point where they're having to make difficult decision to give up the family home or sell the family home, and then that's all they have.
And then where do they go?
Where they go, right? So, and so facilities like this, I think, could be appropriate, but it's difficult for a senior to be in their own space for all this time, and now I'm basically in an apartment complex. So it's a whole, it's a whole, a lot of seniors can't go out to like the Del Webb communities. I don't know if you're familiar with out in Richmond, where
they're super nice, but they're for nice. You need to have a pretty good bank account to live there in all those places. They're for a select few, I feel, but we've got a lot of land, and I think we could use more density and
right. Well, that's a whole nother. Again, we're going to have a whole nother conversation as to density. I'm doing a personal project. I'm building 2 duplexes in Sunnyside because I believe that a part of the affordable housing mix should be affordable rental housing. We always look at home ownership, and to be honest with you, I've been in this for 20 years. Not everybody's a homeowner,
right?
Nor want to be a homeowner,
right?
But my original plan was to build 2 fourplexes. Nice, not anything. And because of our density rules, I can't.
Right.
So if you notice, every fourplex to 8plex in the city of Houston, typically that's in the city limits, typically is 1960 or 65. It's kind of like the last time you see those being built from a year built standpoint. And something happened in the 60s, 70s where we changed our density rules, and therefore you can't build that anymore. And so that to me is an easy solution. That's an ordinance. Right. That's an ordinance. Say, hey, now I can see anytime you go over 3 units under one roof line, it becomes commercial code. And so now I have to do sprinkler system. I have to have ingress and egress all the way around the building. So I'm not going to build a fourplex that basically is making me build a fourplex like a 200-unit apartment complex. It makes the economics bad.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. So sorry, that was soapbox.
No, that's a great topic, though, to talk about some of the ordinances that could be changed. Just kind of slightly to improve. Maybe really improve our quality of life. People have been talking a lot about parking lately, and about accidents and driving and just these requirements that the city has to have all this parking, and like at a lot of it is at bars and
Right.
restaurants where it seems
It does make
counterintuitive.
it does. The new urbanism movement
Yeah.
in walkable spaces and things of that nature. And now that we are starting a rail line, like the ratio of depending on the type of use. I just did a restaurant, and it's I think it's 4 per 1,000, 4 parking spots per 1,000. So we really couldn't for this restaurant. The building we found, we had it was an inline space. We had an issue because there were 3 other restaurants in the center, and so they had used up all the parking, even though the center parking was there was going to be no problem.
Right.
So we had to get the architect to get us a exception for bike. We had put a bike rack, and so if you put a bike rack, that bumps it down a little bit.
You don't need as many parking
So we got
spaces.
through because of that.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of stuff. So in the tradition of African American and Black church, as I come to a close, that's what the preacher says at the end of the sermon. I just wanted to just see, where do you see maybe some of the bigger items, and that sounds like one of them, affordable housing, going forward from a real estate standpoint, in the next upcoming year, since you're a real estate Yoda and you get to see everything. No pressure though.
Yeah. I think it's going to be continue to be a big topic.
Right.
And I mean, our reporters at the Chronicle who have been covering the city and the affordable housing programs, Mike Morris and a bunch of other folks there, they've been on it.
Yeah, I heard him on one of your podcasts.
Yeah.
Talking about the Laura situation. So.
Right. And so as long as we have people, in my profession at the Houston Chronicle, at the, all the publications in town that are, that are looking at these issues and shining light on things and doing it for the betterment of our city, then things have got to improve. Sure. And there might be incremental improvements, but I don't know if that doesn't answer your question.
No, it answers it. It answers it. And this is a different question. Again, we're coming to a close. Nancy, you're so sweet. How do you do difficult interviews, like when you're doing investigative type stuff? Like, you're just a sweet spirited person. So I can't imagine you like, no, tell me the truth. Sorry,
yeah.
I hit the table. I broke the rule. Sorry. Because I'm assuming you've had to have contentious interviews, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I've had a few.
Are you cool with those, or is just is what it is?
Mean, I am. Those are fun,
Yeah.
And no, I'm not a confrontational person, and
Right.
I'm not going to yell at someone. I'm
Right.
going to do my best to get them to tell me things.
Right.
And
especially with developers, because developers can be, we like ourselves a lot. So,
yeah. And one of a journalist's best tools is silence, I guess. When you ask a question to someone, and they don't want to answer it, they just
be quiet.
Do this, and there's silence. And the person that asks the question usually feels like they need to fill the silence.
And jump in, right?
Well, maybe just you just have to be silent and wait for them to answer. And if it gets uncomfortable and awkward, then so be it. And I don't like talking. I like
so
asking questions, but I don't need to hear myself talk.
Right.
I don't need to fill the air. So
right.
So that that helps.
That just helps somebody in their relationship. I'm just going to go off on a tangent here. That somebody's going to ask their significant other a question, and the significant other's not going to want to answer. Nancy just told you, just be quiet.
That's right.
Just be quiet, and eventually they're gonna say, and then you listen.
Yeah.
I'm co-opting her for another whole thing, because that's what we're doing in real estate of life.
No, it's funny. I had an issue last night, in fact, where I would have appreciated silence more than the words that were spoken.
But no, it's real. I just learned something. I learned that's what we do in the real estate life. We teach you stuff just about life and real estate. Nancy,
yes,
I appreciate this. This has been like awesome. This was on my podcast bucket list to have you on.
Well, I'll have to have you on mine, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yes,
and I listened to some of your earlier episodes and really like what you do. I feel like you're definitely a teacher, and
thank you.
I loved your 5 things to know about commercial and residential.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and those were great. And
thank you. We're gonna end right there, because I don't want that. I just want that to float in the air right there. compliment from Nancy Sarnoff from the Houston Chronicle. You can check her out, obviously, at theHoustonChronicle.com, at Cron.com. Also, the Houston Chronicle podcast page on iTunes for is it Looped In? Yeah, Looped In. And I just again thank you so much for being with us. And hopefully at some point in the future we'll be able to have you back and talk about some of the other stuff that we brought up, because I think we could talk for quite some time just on general stuff.
Yeah,
so
I know, this is really fun. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So guys, next week Nancy Sarnoff is going to spend another week. No, I'm joking. I'm just kidding. The third part. Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Please share this with your friends. I sent out the e-blast. If you guys are interested, obviously you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you get your podcasts. And this is The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Rouse, and I will see you next week. Hey, thanks for listening as always. Do you have questions about any of the topics I'm talking about? If you have questions, let me know. Email me at kevin@kevinrouse.com. Again, that's kevin@kevinrouse.com. I'm going to do a podcast just on the questions that you guys are sending to me. So feel free to send them to me. Again, that's kevin@kevinrouse.com.